All right, so we'll do a bit of an intro into who I am, where my sort of journey began, and what I've sort of looked into over the past 10, now probably 11 years. So when we were pregnant with our first child, we sort of said, well, what do we need to do? We're bringing in this baby. You know, we haven't really looked into pretty much anything that we do. You know, we eat the same as everyone else. What's this organic thing? What's this vaccine thing? What's pretty much everything, you know? If we're bringing in this new baby, we have to make sure we don't screw it up. You know, what do we do? We're new to this. So we started digging deep into different issues. We're saying, okay, let's look at vegetarianism. Let's look at what meat does. Let's look at what organic is. Let's look at all of these different things. So it sparked my research. I started looking into things, and I just couldn't believe how much misinformation was out there, and complete disinformation on pretty much every single level. It was sort of mind-blowing. So that opened my eyes a lot, saying, wow, we really have to question now pretty much everything we do, you know? So I started looking into lots of different things. My official sort of education, I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, I have a master's degree in exercise science and psychology, and then I have a research doctorate in psychology, and then a graduate diploma in science. So using all that ability to sort of research and synthesize information, and knowing how to do publications, knowing how to read this stuff, I started digging deep into the research, you know, looking at PubMed, looking at, you know, National Library of Congress, all these different things, saying, well, what is really happening out there, you know? And then you start to realize that the media is completely telling a different story than the reality, you know, with pretty much everything out there. So we started looking into the food. We looked at the pesticide contents of, you know, average food. How many pesticides are in the average apple? 225. Nearly 300 in the average strawberry. And that stuff goes, wow, what's in everything else? So the first book we got was called Detoxify or Die by Sherry Rogers. And Detoxify or Die, you know, she's an environmental toxicologist in the US. She's one of the top ones. And she wrote a whole book on just a massive amount of environmental toxicology. That was the first book we read into any sort of alternative nutrition or toxicology, anything. And we're just like, wow, wow, you sit on a park bench for 5 minutes, it's loading you with arsenic and stealing all your minerals. What? I mean, just random insane things. You wear your shoes in your house, it's the biggest cause of lead poisoning for babies because you attract that lead to the bottom of your shoe. Just millions of little things, and we're like, oh, wow, the toxicity of construction things and houses and roofs and pretty much every single thing out there. You know, you fumigate your house, it's 6 months to now let that off gas from the termites and all these things you're gassing. 6 months minimum. So all these things, it blew our minds. So that started our research into toxicology and detox. So she gives you this sort of research on saying, well, this is everything that's happening in the world. This is why we're in such a diseased state. But here's the simple and easy way to get rid of it. Sweating. It was the infrared sauna. You know, she was big on all the infrared sauna therapy, which we used amazingly with degenerative disease patients and cancer patients. And it's amazing. So sweating, we're not sweating enough, you know. So our journey started unraveling, kept going and going and going, and reading more, learning more. I started different websites. The one we're doing now, which is amazing, is called beyondthrival.com. It's a membership site. It's discounted 50% because we just launched it last month. And it's small videos that are 3 minutes in length. It's got ebooks on there. There's all live food recipes on there. There's really original articles. I read every article on there. So it's like 40 hours of research on earthing, on grounding, the dangers of wheat, pretty much everything. But then we do full circle. We say, okay, here's what you now do. Here are the alternatives to the wheat, which are so easy. Here are the recipes to make live flatbread. So it's a full circle sort of thing based on, you know, all my research for years that puts everything together. And there's sort of nothing out there like that, which is really cool. So I'll give you that at the end as well. So in all this research, got into so many different topics. We got into psychology, looked at neuroscience, got some quantum physics happening, spirituality, just everything. And the more you research and the more you look, the more your mind is just completely blown, you know, massively expanded. One of the cool things I read last week was on white sage. You know, the research on white sage, you know how they, here, put your arms up, they sage you. It actually kills all bacteria in the entire room, every pathogen, for up to 3 days. Wow, that's why they used it to clear not only negative entities, but bacteria, prions, fungus, all these things in the air. It purifies the complete air instantly. So all these ancient things they're doing, modern science is sort of catching up, which is so cool to bridge that gap scientifically. So we're going to be looking a lot at cellular nutrition today, what our bodies need. What do we actually need? Why are we not getting it? And what is the outcome? Well, the outcome is simple. We're seeing it today. We're seeing a disease rate in cancer of 55% in North America. We're seeing autism in 1 in 28 presently. We're seeing it recommended or estimated to be 1 in 2 in the next 10 years. So what are we doing about it? Are we looking at the underlying causes of disease, or are we simply masking them with pills? Or naming new diseases? There's 43,000 diseases. What are the known causes of disease? Stress on the body, deficiency in nutrients, emotional stress, traumas, not doing your life's purpose, and then of course all the physical, lack of minerals, lack of amino acids, lack of fatty acids, lack of vitamins. It's basically a deficiency of nature. That's my definition of disease. It's not having enough nature. And when you look at the research on earthing, it's amazing. The frequency of our body should be 0 volts. Guess what? The earth is 0 volts. We don't touch the earth anymore as a species. The only species that doesn't touch the earth anymore. The only species that does a lot of things different than any other species, which we'll get into, which is why deficiency in nature is one of the big causes of disease. So as soon as you start stepping on the earth, guess what happens? All the EMFs, all the voltage, all these excess frequencies you've taken on, and our generation is getting 200 million times more than our grandparents, is immediately discharged into the earth. The earth is the biggest donor of electrons. So any free radical damage you have going on is instantly gone. It resets the nervous system in 2 seconds. All your adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol, gone. And you get a big burst of acetylcholine, which is the brake. So the whole nervous system just shuts down instantly. When you walk in nature, you're actually breathing in all of these enzymes, all of these nutrients, all of these micro phytopeptides that are the plant's immune system that you're actually bathed in. You get an instant increase in T cell count. Your white blood cell count increases by 50% just by walking in nature, even if you have shoes on. So when you start combining just the deficiency of nature, we see why we're in such a diseased state. What's cool is as soon as we go back to nature, the default state of the body is complete and utter perfect health. There's no such thing as an incurable disease. Only incurable people. So we have to look at the people, as Hippocrates said, it's better to know more about the person who has the disease than the disease the person has. We can't cookie cut anything, any disease. Well, you have cancer, here it is. It has nothing to do with that disease. They've manifested, they've created it through a myriad of different issues, causes that we have to look at. So a lot of you guys are practitioners, which is awesome. So we have a right to really treat that person and say, okay, what are you doing? What stresses in your life? What do you love to do? Are you doing it? No. Why not? Well, I can't know. What can you do? Get a goal list, see what's happening. So we'll try to stay on topic a bit more. So cellular nutrition, back to that. We're going to keep spiderwebbing out and sucking back in. So looking at nutrition, so we've lost about 50% of the minerals in the last 100 years. That's a nanosecond. I mean, the Earth's estimated to be about 5 billion years old. So from over-farming, through runoff, through planting the same monocrop culture, corporate takeover of farms, the backyard gardens disappearing, we've lost pretty much all of the nutrition in the food. We lose another 40% when it sits on the counter shelves, more than 2-3 days. So we're losing almost 70% of the nutrition before we even take it in our bodies. If you start to take heat to that nutrition, well, you've lost another 70 to 90%. You're left with about 10% left of the energy of the food. So what we're doing to our food is one of the biggest causes of disease. It's called auto-intoxication. We're poisoning ourselves with the chemicals that should never be put in the body. Roundup is one of the biggest chemicals. So to get a state of health, we have to pull these chemicals out, and we have to get nutrient-dense food. Those are the really two important things. So we have to look at what the body needs, and what the body doesn't need that it's getting in. So detoxing is so important. They go hand in hand. If we have the minerals, we're going to get into the detox pathways, which are extremely important. If we get into minerals like sulfur, sulfur is deficient in all the soil now. Why? Because we don't compost anymore. We've broken the compost cycle. We put nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, NPK into the soil. What that does is displaces sulfur. Sulfur is needed for 4 amino acids. Most important one is called cysteine, cystein, so N-acetylcysteine. That's the best way to detox the body, is to dope up on cysteine. We do it for people who are getting mercury fillings out because it's a direct precursor to glutathione. Super, super important. So glutathione is called your master antioxidant. So glutathione is your garbage bag. Imagine if you were in your house and you had no more garbage bags and they weren't making any more plastic, which is your cysteine, your precursor. What would you do? You'd have to find some other way. So everything the body does, the body's never going to harm itself. You know, we can get into cancer. Cancer's not even a disease. It's actually a mechanism the body goes through in order to save itself in a very acidic environment, low pH, lack of minerals. It has to create cancer. So what we're trying to do is look at what's happening now in the world and bring it back to the food in which we put in our bodies, the emotions in which we hold. Are we living our purpose, the spirituality? And then the physical body. Are we getting enough nutrients in? Okay. So glutathione, if we're back in the house and we don't have the garbage bag, what can we do? Not much. So the house gets dirtier and dirtier and dirtier. Okay. A lot of people out there believe, or they've been told, we don't have to clean the house. It's fine. It just cleans itself. Okay, normally, yes. But if you have a party every single day in your house, there's no possible way you can. So we're being exposed to 100,000 environmental pollutants every day. When you look at the synergistic effect of 2, it's equivalent to having 1,000 in your body. So we're having massive synergistic effects of all these chemicals. We've run out of garbage bags. There's too much to clean up. Okay? In the US, when they did a study looking at air, they found that 75% of air samples had Roundup in it. They're breathing in Roundup. Roundup is one of the most toxic substances ever produced. There's an article I wrote called The Hidden Dangers of Roundup, which details all the studies on it. So if we're getting these things in, we have to get them out. You know, that first book I mentioned, Detoxify or Die, she talks about all the amazing studies on people who've worked in the most toxic environments as jobs, you know. They could handle a massive toxic burden up to 60 to 90 days. After that, they were showing issues in the body. They were showing neoplasma, you know, cancer, all these other types of things were starting to happen. But if you get them out, you're fine. So what it basically comes down to is we're living in a very toxic world. We have to do things differently. We have to start cleaning more. We have to do internal cleanses, okay? They know Roundup is toxic at 1 part per trillion. These researchers took what's normally found in Roundup, you know, fruits and vegetables. They took a watermelon. They took that level of Roundup. They diluted it with 3 swimming pools worth of water. They put it in kidney cells, placenta cells, liver cells, 24 hours. They said, oh, let's see what happens. And the cells all died within 24 hours. They said, no, there's got to be some mistake. We screwed it up. It must have been more toxic than we believe. Let's do it again. They did it again, the same effect. They said, there's just no way it's this toxic. They did it again. They said, okay, it is this toxic. So Roundup never breaks down in the soil, ever. And it's everywhere. It's in rainwater. It's in every sample out there. So all these things are here. We can't fear them. We just get rid of them. So we talked about sulfur. Sulfur is really important. I don't know if you guys have heard of MSM. Methyl sulfonyl methane. MSM is super, super important. MSM is another natural occurring substance that we don't get enough of. It's in plants. It's really concentrated in aloe vera. I love aloe vera. It's like the best food ever to eat. It's amazing. It's great for ulcerative colitis, digestive issues. It makes everything slippery and pulls everything out. It's got massive polysaccharides which rebuild all the tissue. It's super, super awesome. So getting into lots of B vitamins as well was in aloe, you know. So all these types of foods are needed. So MSM is one of the biggest source of MSM is aloe vera, okay? So it's concentrated. It's concentrated in rainwater. And it has to have soil that has sulfur in it as well, okay? So if you get organically grown broccoli, that's fed exclusively in rainwater, and you eat it raw, you'll get MSM. So it's a sulfur-based vegetable. So you can see how hard it is to get it, because it's attached to a water molecule as well. So what happens as soon as we steam our broccoli, I'm just steaming it, there goes your MSM. There goes all of your enzymes, there goes your whole coding system. Okay? So humans are the only species on the planet that thermally degenerate their food. The only ones. And we see massive, massive problems because of it. So heating and cooking our food has led to a massive increase of disease. And the main reason is our lack of enzymes. So enzymes are the whole encoding structure in the food. If you're looking at our cells, we have roughly 37 trillion cells in the body. Each cell has its own enzyme system. Okay, they have a whole massive amount of enzymes. They have a minimum of 4,000 different enzymes for each of the 37 trillion cells. Each enzyme has very specific functions. They found there's 98 specific enzymes in the arteries alone. So each enzyme has its own function. So getting enzymes, we lose our enzymes as soon as we start heating our food above 55 degrees. We lose our enzymes. That's the coding system. So why enzymes are so important? Enzymes have been called a fountain of youth. Okay? So we're born, there's 3 types of enzymes. There's metabolic enzymes, which are needed for every single process of the body. We only have a bank of those, so we can't make any more. Okay? When we run out, we run out. It's the biggest cause of aging in pretty much every single disease out there. This is why people can smoke and drink and do the worst things ever. If they have an inherent amount of metabolic enzymes, they're going to transmute all that and change it. And they can continue to do these crazy behaviors and live 120 years old. You know? If they didn't, they would have lived even longer. So we have a metabolic enzyme bank, which is needed for every single process of the body. You know, we talked about every cell has 4,000 different enzymes. And they each have a different thing that they do for that cell. They all have different jobs, okay? So we're trying to increase our enzyme bank. We have metabolic enzymes, and we have digestive enzymes. We also have the enzymes that are present in food. If we have them present in food, then we don't need to actually use our own enzymes, so we can store that bank. If we're bankrupt on enzymes, we see massive degenerative disease because we can't rebuild or detox the kidneys or colon because we've lost our metabolic enzymes to break down the massively cooked food we keep eating again and again and again. If we don't have to do that, if the enzymes are inherent in the food, we can save our bank. Okay? Our emergency bank can then go to start working on kidney stones, liver stones, rebuilding stem cells in the spine, you know, getting rid of that osteoarthritis in the knees. All these things can't happen unless we have our enzyme bank stacked. Okay, so enzymes are amazing. Enzymes are inherent in all the food. And if you look at a lion, he grabs a prey, rips it apart. There's several different enzymes that break down the protein that are found in the flesh. If we then go ahead and cook that flesh and then try to eat it, we're not going to break it down. It sticks. It's one of the biggest causes of disease is cooked animal proteins. So we have to get back and say, well, do we eat raw meat? Well, if you want, you know. But it's saying we need more enzymes. We have to go back to the way we used to prepare food and look at all the other species out there. They live in complete abundance and they live in a natural habitat. You know, if you look at wild foods, there's an interesting study done about 5 years ago on monkeys. And they were looking at, well, how do these guys get all of their protein? You know, the old protein myth. So they followed them around and they watched what they ate, they watched what they dropped, they collected every single thing and they analyzed it. You know, they only went to specific trees, they only ate specific leaves, and they only ate this much, the tips of all the leaves. And they found only in that tip concentrated were 22 essential amino acids, or 22 amino acids. All 9 essential amino acids were in that tip. A complete protein source was found in the tips of the leaves that only the monkeys knew about. They would eat wild food. All wild crafted fruit. Not the hybrid stuff in the store that's full of sucrose, but a fructose matrix similar to honey, which is in wild foods. It had 65 times more minerals than the average person in North America. These monkeys, it blew their minds. So wild food, going back to nature, is so important. Most of our food has been hybridized. So if you go in the store and get a banana, it's straight sucrose. So you need to eat 10 or 12 of them because the mineral content is completely stripped, which is another important thing of how we're actually getting our nutrients and when we know we're full. So we have a massive increase of food-like products out there with a decrease in food. So when you have real food, wild food, just like the monkeys eat, you have a big density of minerals. Okay? You have lots of enzymes. You have just everything. It's complete. It hasn't been manipulated by nature, hasn't been changed to grow in certain conditions, hasn't been changed to increase sugar so you want more. So these minerals are stacked in there. So when you have something that's mineral dense, it fills you up. So satiety, of saying when you're full, works on two ways. There's stretch reflectors in the stomach, or it works on minerals. You take something that's super mineral dense. We make raw cakes. We do raw dinners down in Puerto Viejo. We have one coming up next week. And if you eat like a slice of raw pizza, you're so full, it's ridiculous. Where if you eat cooked pizza, you could have probably 3 or 4 full pizzas and still be hungry 20 minutes later. Because your body says, well, I can't use that, I can't use that, I can't use that. Your stomach was completely full. It goes to see what's, you left it all garbage. It's got to throw it all out. Everything's been changed, altered by the high heat. It can't use anything. So we're hungry again. So we eat again, we eat again, we eat again. So this is what's happening in North America. It's a massive obesity epidemic. You know, upwards of 80% of the population, of 40 to 50% of kids. That's insane. Because they're eating purposely filled, mineral deficient food. So the body has to keep eating more. You can eat 20 bags of chips easily because there's nothing in there. They've been so heated, processed, changed that the food is dead. So your body says, I can't use any of this. Keep giving me more. And it's like, yeah, the same crap. And it keeps coming and keeps coming and keeps coming. So we never learn. Even in the advent of massive childhood diseases, you know, an epidemic that we've never seen on this planet before. We continue to do the same thing. In fact, make it worse, you know. Have Agent Orange corn coming on, genetically modified corn with Agent Orange in it. So the bug eats it and dies. So do we, but slowly, you know. So eating organic, obviously, you know, the number one thing to your health is eating pure food. Where are you getting your food? Number 2 is getting it live. You know, if you can do an 80% live food diet, amazing. It could be a slow process to get there. Once you're there, you don't want to go back. You can't go back. You feel like you've been hit with a sledgehammer if you have anything that you shouldn't have, you know. So Hans Selye was the man who first coined the term stress in the 1800s. He was one of the original sort of naturopaths. And he came up with something called the Selye scale of disease. So all disease goes through 3 phases. We have the alarm phase. We're born into the alarm phase, okay? When we cleanse and clean the body out, we get back to the alarm phase. That's where you want to be at. When we cleanse people out, sometimes they yell at me because they're too clean. They can't go out to dinner anymore. They're having massive diarrhea. They're throwing up. They're getting all the GMOs that their body's dumping out instantly. They're sensitive now. They're not numb. So if you try to give a baby a shot of tequila, what's he going to do? He'll be like, and you're like, no, it's really good, look. They're like, you know, it doesn't work. They're in the alarm phase. They can smell it from a mile away. It doesn't work. If you do that, that is a tequila, burns, you know, alcohol, massive solvent, one of the biggest causes of thyroid cancer, throat cancer, because it kills your cells. They have to adapt. So if you give that to, you know, someone who's 15, 16 partying, they'll feel it. They'll get completely, you know, hammered, screwed, you know. And then they'll say, oh, I'm never doing that again. They'll do it again. So the more you do something, the more you have pesticides, the more you have, you know, really superheated animal proteins, GMOs, you get to an adaptation phase. That's less signs, less symptoms, less signals. So your body says, okay, wait, remember, don't do that, don't, and it's like, no, don't do it, shut up, don't do it, no. Okay, fine, go for it. So you get to the exhaustion phase. And the exhaustion phase is where we see 99.9% of degenerate diseases. People can eat the same crap every single day, and they feel fine. Like, you just ate the 12th box of ramen noodles. Does that taste good? I don't know. How can you eat that? I don't know. I'd be dead in 2 seconds. Like, so they get used to it, okay? So what we're doing is taking people out of that exhaustion phase and bringing them up to the alarm phase, okay? Where you're super sensitive. If you give up wheat for more than 2-3 days, you're super sensitive. Alcohol for more than a week, you're super sensitive. Sugar for more than 3 days, super sensitive. All the things that our bodies are not supposed to process have gotten used to it. This is where we see disease. So we're trying to get it clean out and reset from a mind, body, spiritual, and emotional standpoint. So cleansing is super, super important. So one of the best cleanses, fasting is awesome. Ben Franklin called it nature's surgery. By day 3 of fasting, you get a massive burst of stem cells that Western medicine never thought was possible, other than taking them from a placenta and injecting them into people, babies, you know. Your body produces its own stem cells, only when it's able to. Most of the time our bodies are treading water, trying to deal with this massive onslaught that we have to deal with every day on this really, really toxic planet. So 80% of our energy when we eat goes to digest food. You know, it starts when we chew, we get salivary amylase. Then it drops down to stomach. You know, if there's enzymes in there, it's great. If it's not, it sits. Cooked food sits for an hour and a half, doesn't get touched. The enzyme process starts in the stomach, first 90 minutes. If you have lots of enzyme-rich live food, guess what? Beep, it goes down. So everything starts up here. So fasting, super, super awesome. Getting a big burst of stem cells, cleansing the body, using that 80% of your energy that you use to digest food, and it's putting it on hold. So it's like saying, I'm not working for 2 weeks, I'm going to clean my house. Imagine what you can get done. I'm going to clean the closet that's been on my list for 6 years. My car, I'm really going to take out the mats and actually scrub them. All the stuff you've been wanting to do, your body does the same thing. Puts everything on hold just to survive daily. Detoxing, bit cleaning, fighting viruses, infections. To do a deep clean, fasting is amazing. We start with coconut water fasting, or pipa, as it's known here. The young ones are super, super awesome. Those are ones that match the body's blood. So 55% of our blood is plasma. The other 45% is hemoglobin. So pipa is the biggest source of electrolytes, and there's a 100% match of the body's plasma, which is pretty amazing. So with people with cancer, degenerative diseases, when we're fasting them, we do 55% pipa water, 45% green juice. That's a 100% live blood match. That's unbelievable. Drink that. So it's 55% pipa, 45% green juice. So the hemoglobin matches.
Like you give them like pipa and
yeah, so it's exactly, yeah.
And then
yeah, for days, sometimes months, straight. Yeah, stage 4 bone cancer was 30 days of straight juice, pipa, and it's gone. Kidney tumors everywhere, completely gone, you know. So everything is reversed when you give the body what it needs and learn to dump everything out, okay? So fasting, nature's surgery. Amazing. It's the best way to cleanse, you know, super, super important. So we start with pipa water, then we get more advanced, we start doing juice. Pipa is awesome because you feel so happy, so high, you'll be so creative, it's unbelievable. It's like getting just a blood transfusion, you know, just sitting there being so high, happy, yes.
Sorry. Do you have like a limit of pipa or?
You'll know.
Okay.
Yeah, some people do 6 and they're good. Some people do 8. My mom comes, she does 8. I'm like, really? 8? I can do 40. She does 8. She feels awesome. All her joint pain disappears, and
But
yeah.
You're saying that
So it's intuitive.
8 is a lot.
8, if it is for you. Drinking water as well. You want to flush it out. It's a diuretic. So drinking lots of water, pipa. Yeah. Yes.
So what does people with low pressure can do? Because I have heard that people with
Yeah, I've looked. I've never found anything. It's like a folklore. I've looked, yeah. Hypotensive effects of pipa, and it doesn't exist, coconut water. Yeah, not say it can't happen in individuals. Anything can happen in anyone at any time. So, you know, it depends. Usually it's tyrosine deficiency and L-DOPA, dopamine deficiency, which is low blood pressure issues. Being adrenal burned out and stress, you need tyrosine for adrenaline. So, yeah, yes.
Do you notice difference between pipa and coconut water?
Yeah, you definitely want pipa. Coconut water is too sweet. Even the older pipas that have the thicker sort of meat are a bit sweet. You know, there's 3 times more sugar. You want the ones that are 6 months old, they're round. When they start going up to 9 months and they harvest them, they get oblong, they get the meat, which is the placenta for the tree. And it just gets really, really sweet. I mean, you can do them. It's not, if there's nothing else out there, then that's fine. It just will get like a sugar coating on your tongue, and you just, if you don't have enzymes and things, yeah, stomach turns sour, and yeah, it's just not fun. The pipa water is just straight water. So we do a bit of pipa, 5 days, 3 days, just start it, and then we'll start going into juice. You know, the juice is really, really powerful. depending on what you use. We use a lot of turmeric, ginger, beets. Beets are the best vegetable blood purifier ever found. They're red, it's the doctrine of signatures. They're just like the blood. They match the blood, they clean the blood. So people, especially degenerative diseases, you start with like a quarter of a beet, maybe even an 1/8. So beets are awesome. Lots of greens. Get some kale, get some broccoli, get some wild greens in there, a bit of Pacific spinach, but it's a bit high in oxalates. Get the turmeric in there, massive anti-inflammatories. Turmeric's like the best herb ever found in the history of the world. The research just keeps coming out again and again and again. It reduces tumor size in a month by 80%. You know, all pain, arthritis, gone in 60 days. It's better than anti-inflammatory, you know, steroid injections as well. And its cousin, it works very well with its cousin, which is ginger, you know, inhibitor. So all of these things are here. You know, this is why we actually chose to live here. We said, where's the medicine? You know, so getting into juicing is awesome. That's going to dump everything out. And then when people are really advanced, 2 years minimum cleansing, we start getting into live water fasts. Live water fasts are going to be very, very hard, very fast. They dump everything out. If you try for even half a day, you'll feel it. If you try for a whole day, you'll really feel it. It's like the towel getting wrung out. So doing some preliminary cleaning is definitely recommended. Has to be live water. Live water is probably the most important thing you can do to turn your health around without a voltage, which is really important but very hard to find. So spring water direct from the source. You know, it's just such a difficult thing to find. This is why we're in such a diseased state. As soon as you start putting that 60 hertz electrical frequency of water, it fragments, it changes it. As soon as you cap the water, it's starving for oxygen. It's dead. It dies in 48 hours. Okay? So it's dense. It's really hard. The electrical spark in water disappears. So we gravity feed rainwater, and then we hand pick it and put it in another gravity fed filter, which is the big Berkey filter, and it's a ceramic, so it just drips everything down. And the spark is unbelievable. That's what, you know, I brought down with me from the rainforest. And then on our farm we have gravity-fed only spring water. That's from a cave. We set it all up so we could just get it gravity-fed, so we wouldn't put any electricity on it. So then you're taking on, just like earthing, you're taking that inherent frequency of earth. You're not getting charged from your water. You know, if you look at research of water, on another topic, pretty amazing. So it goes, every time you hit a 90-degree angle in water, it's like slapping a child. It completely traumatizes the water. When you look at research on tap water versus spring water, there's roughly 20,000 times the energy in spring water than tap water. Tap water is completely dead. There's not much you can do to revive it. There's not much. It's already been beat, abused, done with. You know, you can try, you can add a few things to it. Yes?
So if you take it from the tap to a filter, it doesn't work, right?
It's still traumatized. You've now taken off his clothes and he's clean. Still got the abuse. Yeah, so getting the best water, don't freak out about the water. I mean, just getting the best water you can at any moment, you know? But there's like peak things that when you start doing feel unbelievable. And again, it's difficult to go back. If I have any dead water, I'm like, you just can't drink it, which sucks. So you got to carry all this water everywhere you go, you know, and have the live water. So getting live things are really important. Biophotons, the light energy, you know, biophotons are only found in raw food. You know, small beams of light, which carry all the prana, which is the full spectrum of energy. You know, so getting into live food, super, super important. You're going to get all the enzymes, build up that enzyme bank so you can do more metabolic processes. The big fountain of youth, anti sort of aging instantly. Looking at the sun is pretty amazing. Anyone tried sun gazing? Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I did it for got up to 25 minutes. We lived in Australia. It was amazing. Didn't need to eat hardly at all, but then saw way too many things from different worlds coming in, and I was like, is that you? And it wasn't my wife. It was someone else that wasn't really alive. So yeah, it's amazing, but it triples the size of the pineal gland. It's the only thing on the planet that they found to do that. So it activates your brain up to 35%. Your brain becomes a virtual supercomputer. So your psychicness, your clarity, your vision, your ability to synthesize things. I could just look at someone and read all of their traumas instantly. I was like, And I had to step back and all. I mean, it was like, wow. So yeah, I stopped. I went down to about 2 minutes a day for a bit because yeah, it opens up dimensions and worlds you never thought possible. Your vision from here goes to there, and a lot of stuff is out here, you know. So that's an awesome thing to do. Do it barefoot as well. So the earthing, you're getting all the electrons from the earth. Which is really, really important. So we'll talk a bit about electrolytes. Electrolytes are another sort of foundation of health. So the body has 6 electrolytes that it uses, and they're responsible for 95% of the processes of the body. So if you go to a doctor, they should first be checking your electrolyte levels. If they're not really interested in anything preventative. So we talked about how we lost a lot of these minerals. So 4 of these electrolytes are mineral-based. Okay? So you have sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium. We have sodium bicarb, which is produced in the pancreas, and we have chloride. So those 6 are needed for 95% of the processes of the body. So if you're building a house, that's the foundation. If you don't get that right, it doesn't matter what you build on top. You're still going to have this rotting foundation. So we talked about how we lost 50% of our minerals in the last 100 years, you know, since the turn of the century. So it's really, really important to get mineral-dense food, getting into lots of live food. You know, you want to be eliminating the nutrients. We don't pick an apple and then burn it and say, yeah, that's awesome, but we put it in this oven, you know. And the cooked food thing really shuts us down. Did you know that there's dimethyltryptamine or DMT in every single plant that's live? So it's one of the ways we open up our consciousness. That's the food for the pineal gland. Tryptophan is the same frequency as tryptamine. So cacao beans, food of the gods, is also going to open and decalcify that pineal gland. Having fun?
Yeah.
All right, so back to electrolytes. So we have these electrolytes that are so needed for all these functions of the body. They're needed for all of our creation of enzymes. So we have these 4,000 enzymes we talked about per cell. These enzymes are then needed to help create and manufacture more minerals. The minerals are then needed to activate these enzymes. Okay, so it's like the lock and the key. You know, you could have all these keys or locks and no keys. Okay, so everything works hand in hand. If you don't have the minerals to activate the enzymes aren't going to do their job. So the minerals are needed for the enzymes. So when we get mineral-rich wild food, it's mineral-rich, it's enzyme-rich, it just works. So it's activating every single process in our body at once. This is how you can reverse degenerative diseases very, very fast, going back to a live food diet. Just the normal diet that everyone else eats, you know, out of the other, you know, 2 million species out there. So getting into that, super, super important, getting into this live enzyme-rich food, these minerals that are inherent in there. So we have the sodium. Where are we getting our sodium from? One of the best sources of sodium. Sodium is interesting because when you put any heat to sodium, it doesn't really like it. You know, it loses its electrical charge, loses its affinity. So what you have to do is get it raw. So what we have is Himalayan salt. Himalayan salt's 250 million years old. Super old, super amazing. Any of the sea salt that you see, most of it's kiln dried. So they take it and they put it in a big clay kiln. They go 3,000 degrees. It's dry, package it, keep going, keep going, keep going. So Himalayan salt doesn't have any heat to it. It's drilled off out of mountains, you know, mountaintop kind of thing, up in the Himalayas. So you can make something amazing called Soleil, which the ancient Egyptians used to cure all disease. So Soleil is taking about an inch of Himalayan salt, about 3.5 centimeters, putting it in a jar. Then you can add any type of live water you can. If you don't have live water, you can use filtered water. The best sort of water you have. Shake it up, let it sit for 8 hours. What that's going to do is that's going to create something called Soleil. So Soleil has 90 trace minerals in it. It's a big charger for your cells. It's electrically active. Every nerve impulse that you have is sodium, potassium. You know, polarization, depolarization, the ventricles of the heart, every single thing. It opens these gates, brings this exchange, and you're flooding. So sodium, potassium, really, really important. Those are the electrolytes, the electrical conductors. So getting more Soleil in, you do a teaspoon, shake that up. It takes about 8 hours to charge. And then in the morning, you're going to take a teaspoon, put it in a glass of water, and drink it. So shake it up just before you drink it. You should see a little bit of Himalayan salt in the bottom. And that means you've saturated that 1-to-1 ratio of salt to water. Salt water pretty much cures all disease. That's the original sort of formula, going back thousands of years. So when you combine, It's basically an inch. You can't go wrong. It'll be, you know, it won't absorb it. You'll just have more on the bottom, and then you're going to shake it. It'll stay on the bottom, and then, but it's basically about an inch.
Of salt and
Yep, and then water.
water.
Yeah, so depending how big the container is, and it will never rot, so you can keep it forever. And it's the best way to increase hydrochloric acid as well.
And then the preparation that you made, you put
1 teaspoon, yeah, and a cup of water.
another cup of water.
Yep, so you're going to keep that main mix. You're just going to take a teaspoon of that. And that'll stay, depending how big, 3 to 6 months. So that's going to start detoxing all the halogen family. Halogen is the fluoride, the chlorine that we get, the perchlorate, the bromine, all of that stuff. So we have the NaCl. The Cl is chloride. The chlorine in the water is an oxidized form of chloride. So it kills indiscriminately. You know, it kills our flora, which is 80% of our immune system. So getting the Soleil is going to start to detox these halogens, the chlorine water that we have. We have to get a shower filter. It's so important, especially in San Jose. Either we get the filter or become the filter. You know, the biggest contaminant they found in tap water is actually toilet paper, which is interesting. And the average is 700 other, you know, types of toxins and heavy metals. And when we take a shower, we get the equivalent of 20. We absorb the equivalent of 20 glasses of tap water. Because the heat basically vaporizes everything, we're breathing it in, everything dilates in the skin, and we're absorbing it. So if we can't put it on our skin, if we can't eat it, we can't put it on our skin. That's really the #1 rule of any kind of things we're putting on. If you can't take this jug of whatever, shampoo, you can't put it on your skin. So the average woman absorbs 8 pounds of makeup through their face every year. That's insane. And most makeup is carcinogens, you know, carcinogens. All the parabens and all the other crap in them, they're not meant to be on. So we're absorbing, you know, the skin's a live creature. So 60% of what we put on, we absorb. So really important to make sure. So Soleil is going to help detox the body of all that crap. It's going to dump it all out. It's going to dump out the chlorine because it's got chloride, which matches that frequency. It's going to dump out the fluoride if we've been in a place that has fluoride in the water, big calcifier of the pineal gland. It's going to open up the pineal gland as well. It's going to give us these 90 trace minerals, which are really hard to find. The boron, the vanadium, all these things, the silver, the gold, all these things that are really, really tricky to find in the soil that don't really exist even in organic agriculture, because we're not putting them back in. They're only found in wild sort of places or way up on mountaintops that are millions of years old, you know. So it takes that energy and creates Soleil, which is amazing. So one of the best ways to start detoxing the body, getting into Soleil, we talked about aloe vera is awesome, fasting as well. My favorite thing, the most important thing I think is needed for health is probiotics. They're by far the most important thing out there, you know. So probiotics are 80% of the immune system. So there's thousands and thousands of different types of bacteria that our body uses. And that little organ they said is useless, known as the appendix, creates all of them that they still remove in kids because they're in there. So all these probiotics basically allow us to absorb and break down the food. Okay, so you have hydrochloric acid that starts it. Actually, we start it in our chewing. We have salivary amylase. Amylase breaks down only carbohydrates, doesn't do the proteins and the fats. That comes later when it hits the intestines. And then we go down here and we have the stomach. So then we have the hydrochloric acid, we have the pepsin as well. It sits in there for about an hour and a half, and then we start going into small intestine, and then we have all our probiotics that kick in. So in the meantime, if we have digestive enzymes, it's going to start breaking them down. Okay. If we don't, we get this big bloating, fermentation, we get gas, we get wind, we get all this stuff happens. Your probiotics have to come in as sort of an emergency, and they start breaking it down. You get a fermentation process. Okay, so gas and wind and all that stuff shouldn't be happening if we're absorbing the nutrients from our food properly. So probiotics, super, super important. The ones we use are called Dr. Ohhira's. Doctor, and then it's OHHIRA. So they're from Japan. And this guy's won every single award for probiotics. It's reversed, massive autism, almost instantly. You know, people we work with do a lot with autistic kids and Asperger's kids. And literally day by day, the kids are changing. You know, mothers are just writing saying, oh, this is unbelievable. I get to meet my son for the first time and he's 7 years old. He's not smashing his head against Dr. Ohhira's, OHHIRA. So they're from Japan. And every batch that I get in, we test with a Geiger counter. There's no radiation on them at all yet. So yeah, he spent basically 40 years developing these strains. He's got 12 strains of prebiotics and 12 probiotics. So they're basically feeding themselves. They don't need to be in the fridge. They just sit and they live happily ever after. He ferments them in these big oak barrels for 5 years while playing Mozart every day, while giving them every superfood to eat, maitake mushroom, dancing mushroom, reishi, and all these seaweeds, the most ridiculous things ever. So what results is unbelievable. You know, we've had people we give them to, we say, here, try them. We said, oh yeah, okay. And then notice 20 things in 24 hours. And they're like, give me more. The energy enhances instantly. They found probiotics are needed to detox all the chemicals. They didn't think they did that. 3 weeks ago, they said, yeah, wow, probiotics are needed to detox all these pesticides. Without them, we get more accumulation. And this is 80% of our lymphatic system. That enormous belly that most men have over 45, looks like they're pregnant, is massive toxicity to the lymphatic system. That's from eating pasteurized and antibiotic-rich meat, dairy, chicken, all these things that are stripping out your gut flora. You don't have any garbage bags. You can't get the stuff out. It sits. It sits. And if you have garbage in the corner, what else comes? You get rats, you get fungus, you get mold. People have candida, fungal overgrowth, parasites, protozoa, amoebas, all these things. It's the same. We have to take care of the terrain. We have to clean the house. Super important. So the Dr. O'Hare's probiotics are so important to do that because they work on so many other levels. That's the first thing when people are depressed, we give them probiotics. Because that's where 95% of your neurotransmitters come from. All your dopamine, all your serotonin. So we have L-tryptophan, makes hydroxytryptophan, makes niacin, B3, which is linked to 50% of the mental disorders. That's all produced in the gut. Makes your melanin to sleep deep, or melatonin, and makes your serotonin. Serotonin is your shield against stress. Nothing worries you. Your house is burning down, you got serotonin, build another one. If you don't have it, everything is stressful, everything is worried, or you'll find something to worry about if everything's perfect. That's serotonin deficiency, that's gut. That's digestive system. It's all the same sort of stuff. Lack of sleep. You know, this is why the top 2 meds used in the US are Prozac and the sleeping one, Ambien. They go hand in hand with the same processed food that strip out all of the gut. All the precursors to everything we need are here. So they just found that they call it the new brain. The first brain is actually the gut. It isn't the second one. Everything that's produced in the brain is actually produced here and pushed up into the brain. We only make about 1% of our serotonin in our brain. So the whole plot of Western medicine is completely wrong. There's no study showing that serotonin is produced in the brain, the majority of it. So we're giving medication for things that are recycling a little bit of serotonin while not increasing it, not addressing the cause of any disease out there. Because if you address the cause, you'd put yourself out of business very, very fast. So the causes of disease are mineral deficiencies due to soil, superheated processed food. It's not food anymore. You know, it's being super stressed. Yes.
Would you recommend taking probiotics and like mineral tablets and I don't know?
Minerals you can't break down. You got to get from food.
Like
I mean,
this,
you can. Yeah, there's certain ones you can get.
This huge statues of I don't know whatever.
There's fulvic
vitamins
acid.
and-
Yeah, there's fulvic acid, which is awesome. It's called Liquid Light. It's by Sun Warrior, which she's got a few Sun Warrior stuff. Fulvic acid is, yeah, it's amazing. It's millions. It's the humus in the soil that basically has been broken down over years and years, and it's all these trace minerals that you can't get. That does have the vanadium and all these other, you know, silver and, you know, these ormus minerals that you just can't get in the soil. It just doesn't exist anymore.
Probiotics, like this capsules.
Yeah, they're little capsules kind of thing.
But
Those
I mean, would you recommend them? Taking
probiotics, yeah, that's the number one thing
what
ever.
kind?
The Dr. O'Hara's, yeah. I mean, there's other things. There's another one called.
Like through Amazon?
That's the problem, yeah.
How do you get them?
You can get them on Amazon.
Okay.
Whether they'll ship here. Actually, there's a company that does ship here. It's called Return. I can give you the address. It's return and then 2health.net. And they'll ship to Costa Rica. Problem is there's so many monopolies on all these companies now that the company in the US can't ship here because these other companies got. So yeah, those guys can ship here. The only things I've actually gotten through customs. The only thing I order. Because last time they held me as a drug smuggler for chia seeds. Said it was opium for 12 hours, like in handcuffs in the back. It was crazy. Yes. Kefir, yeah, that's great. Yeah, so all these natural things. So the problem is today, if we're trying to get back from an unnatural state of disease, you know, antibiotics don't really exist in nature. I mean, they do, penicillin, but you wouldn't take it so often. You wouldn't have it in your drinks. You wouldn't have it in your food every single day. You know, if we're eating meat, cheese, you know, all these things, eggs, all this stuff that's been fed all these antibiotics and things, we're getting them in as well. So it's an unnatural state to be in. Can the kefir kick all that's ass? Maybe. Probably not. So once we go on these probiotics, we can repair all that damage. And then yes, we do kombucha, we do kefir, we do all the other stuff every day. That's our food. You know, the food is the medicine. But we also take the probiotics because we're getting hit with 600 live viruses via chemtrails. You know, so we need a strong immune system. 80% is here. And it's constantly being stripped out. Stress, anxiety, worry, alcohol, dairy, showering chlorinated water, drinking coffee, wheat, all of that strips it out completely. So humans have the most sensitive digestive tract of any mammal, and it's getting completely ripped apart with the worst chemicals ever. So the Ohiras are going to help detox all these chemicals. Like I said, we're breathing in, you know, breathing in Roundup, which is insane, you know. It's in the rain, it never breaks down. It's in the oceans, it's in the wells, it's in the rivers, it's everywhere. That's just one out of 100,000. So because we're living in a completely unnatural state right now, we have to do other things, you know. You wouldn't have a kefir you need it for 5 years with all these different strains in it, but now we do, you know. So we have to really have a look at, well, what's happening in the world today? You know, how much radiation is being emitted out of Fukushima? Yes?
She asked a question.
Sure.
Probiotics. And it's something like this. If some of them are fermented, how will that affect somebody that has diabetes, or somebody that used to drink a lot and get fermented probiotics?
So probiotics, yeah, are naturally fermented. So you're saying, would it have a bad effect on diabetes, a negative effect?
That's it. I'm sorry, I've only had 2 hours of sleep.
That's all right. Nice. Yeah, so I mean, it would be the best thing ever for every single aspect of the body. You know, blood sugar regulation, insulin, all that stuff. Yeah, is linked back to the enzyme, the bacteria, and all. You know, so it's caused by a deficiency of that, essentially. Cool. Yeah, so getting back to this whole, you know, state of the world, what I do is research all the time, seeing what's happening, checking things out, because we always have to upgrade. We have to, you know, you have to imagine we're an alien cruising around, looking down and saying, wow, 55% of people have cancer on this planet. Am I going to do the same things they're doing? Not really. I can if I want that, or if I want this, or if I want heart disease, or all these other things that are completely preventable and reversible. So we have to do things different. You know, we have to look at what's happening in the world and say, I need to do things differently. You're considered crazy and a freak, but it's fine. Disease has been normalized and socialized, which is a problem. You know, in Australia, we had little kids being made fun of if they didn't have an asthma inhaler. Oh, you don't have one? Haha, loser. It's like, oh, because all the mycoplasma, which is being sprayed, which is the cause of asthma, and it's in vaccines. So it's stuff that we have to now really gear up our immune system for, because it's unnatural things. You know, there's so many unnatural things happening. You know, if you look at Fukushima radiation, what's still leaking out of there 3 years on is equivalent of 1,500 nuclear bombs being dropped every day. Every day. By day 3, it's 4,500. So what are we doing? Well, the minerals we know protect against radiation. So there's a shelving system of radiation. So if we don't have enough potassium, we get cesium. You know, we get cobalt-60. We get all these radioactive elements that work. If the shelf is full, yeah, it can't go there, they find someone else. So all these things that are happening out there, just like you know, these diseases, bacteria, fungus, viruses, they seek a weak host. You know, if you're a bat and this house is abandoned, or this place is abandoned, you have the doors open, are you going to live here? Well, if people are in here every day, probably not. If no one's in here, sure. If you can get in and live for free, you will. So that's what bacteria, viruses, and everything else do to the body. Okay, it's not just random or by chance. It's all the immune system, and 80% is in the gut. And we have antimicrobial peptides, or AMPs, that are in the throat that are directly responsive from vitamin D. You know, so vitamin D, sunshine, just natural things that we don't do because we've been working or doing things differently. You know, so getting back to just natural living, which is really difficult in a city. you know. So finding time to walk barefoot, sun gazing, live water, wow, amazing. Once you go there, you'll never go back, you know. Getting into more live food, doing things that are different, you know, because disease is really convenient. It's really easy. You just do everything else they want you to do. Here's the water, here's this, here's that. Don't do things different. So if we do things different, we have to start thinking, well, what can I now make? Okay, they're serving this bread. Well, if we look at wheat, you know, we know wheat's now a big bioweapon. You know, wheat's got 23,000 inflammatory proteins in it. Not one, not just gluten. Gluten's one of 23,000. And they found pertussis was actually in wheat, whooping cough. It had a whole protein structure that was embedded in there. So kids are getting whooping cough from having wheat. So the tip of it is these lectins. So it's called wheat germ agglutinins or lectins. Lectins are tiny invisible thorns that basically these bugs go, and when they try to bite the wheat, they can't. It's like a barbed wire fence. Okay. So what happens when we consume that? Well, it causes complete tears in the intestinal lining. Okay, it causes perforations, permeability of the cell membrane. So we actually get our food that drops through. You know, that's one of the big causes of diabetes. So we get a spike of blood sugar. We get a big white blood cell response because these guys shouldn't be in here in the blood at all. Should be staying in here. And we get really tired and fatigued, and we're craving sugars 20 minutes after we eat, because we get a big burst of insulin. After we eat, blood sugar rises, insulin comes over the top, whoop, drops it. So now we're in a hypoglycemic state where we need some sort of sugar. You know, give me chocolate, give me something. That means there's some blood glucose issue, which 95% of people have and aren't even aware of. Okay, that's enzyme deficiencies. That's probiotic deficiencies. That's not eating enough live food. The encoding of the food has gone wrong. And what the body does is it knows what you're bringing in. It's not going to give you more enzymes. It'll give you the exact amount that you need at that moment to break down the food. If there's no fats, you won't have any lipase. If you don't have any carbs, you won't have any amylase. You know, so the body will give you exactly what it needs. It's super, super adaptive. Okay, so when we start to change the things we consume, everything starts to change. Your body starts to adapt and integrate that as well. So back to our electrolytes, sodium, now onto potassium. Potassium is super important. We talk about the electrical polarization of the cells. Where do we get our potassium from? Everyone knows the old commercials. Bananas, sort of. Yeah, if you're getting wild bananas, the red bananas, if you've seen the purple bananas, do a lot of those down the Caribbean. They're from India, they're amazing. Inside they're called ice cream bananas. There's hundreds and hundreds of species of bananas. We have date bananas growing. We have 60 different types growing. We have manzana, the apple bananas that taste just like an apple. If you guys have ever tried those, those are all wild, unbelievable. Normal bananas are super boring and dense of nothing.
I think I heard cultured water has potassium.
Yeah, potassium, it's got all the electrolytes. Wow. So it's the biggest source of electrolytes in the world is the coconut water. And they found that bananas have more electrolytes than Gatorade. They put it to the test, and Gatorade's like, oh. That's funny. So yeah, everything has minerals in it. The more wild you get it, the more different. You know, and that's what happens when you go to the grocery store. You get the illusion of choice. You know, here's the big illusion of every hybridized food that's got every chemical in the world that's super carcinogenic. That's been sitting here for days on end. Pick from all of that. Wow, how great. Thank you for looking after me. So getting into like real food, wild fruit, starting growing food, if possible, you can grow papayas, you can grow bananas, get different types of bananas, go find some permaculture farm and grab some cool things. Just get things differently, So potassium you can find in beet greens. Beet greens are one of the really awesome superfoods that I love. It's one of the biggest sources of iron as well. So it turns to that blood red. So we juice beet greens, people are iron deficient. And it's also a rich source of potassium. You can get some dates, figs are rich in potassium. Pretty much all fruit has potassium in it. It just depends on the amount. The more wild it is, the more it's going to be packed. The more it hasn't been stripped. So if you look at things that are wild in the jungle, you have this constant composting that's going on. So the big trees above, canopy trees, drop down leaves and sticks, and you have this constant composting happening. So everything stays mineral rich. If you take it to a farm setting, you remove all of that, okay? So you can just see by putting a tree here, it's not going to do well. Okay, so after 2 or 3 or 5 seasons, maybe 10 seasons, the minerals in the soil are completely depleted. You know, and then the NPK they put on it, or there's a bit of sulfur, it's not enough. It's certainly not 90 trace minerals that are needed to create the flavor. When you have an organic fruit, the flavor is the minerals. I can tell instantly if it's organic or not. Instantly, 2 seconds. It's like, yeah, no. So it has a super flavor. It's amazing. It's like on fire. It's lit. It's got passion. It's amazing. So real food has flavor. This is why they're trying to trick us all with all these chemicals, because the dead food without the chemicals in it, without the minerals, doesn't taste good at all. So they then have to add all these things in them to make it enhance the flavor, MSG, to make it addictive, you know, because every cell in your body has receptors for glutamate. So it activates and excites every single cell in your body. Getting rid of all this like crap food, these things that we don't need, that are all designed to keep us in just a state of control. You know, because real food liberates us, you know. Looking at the sun liberates us. Walking barefoot liberates us. All of these things create a whole free species where our pineal glands are open. We're thinking of how can I be of service to others? How can I live my purpose? How can I live my passion? Not how can I get a shiny new car? It's completely opposite. It's getting us back to being humans. The food has the dimethyltryptamine. You know, it has all that in it. It's been used as a weapon now. So we have to get back to this live food. We have to start growing our own food. We have to get back to a normal state of humanism, which is disease-free. You know, there's no other species that runs around with disease. There's 2 million of them. What are we doing differently? Pretty much everything. So again, we have to get back to that nature. When we're deficient in nature, you know, we basically have things that are, we have man's creations and we have God's creations, what already existed. You know, you have man's creation they call modern medicine. It's 100 years old. You have plants 250 million years old. I wonder who wins. Yeah, get out of here. Who are you? Yeah, it's ridiculous. So 80% of the medicine we're seeing today is coming from plants. You know, you look at Coumadin, which is the blood thinner. That came from coumarin. Coumarin's in cat's claw and all these other amazing herbs. They took it from guaco, which grows here. They changed one salt molecule and they changed coumarin to Coumadin. And now they sell that. So it already exists in plants, but it's balanced. When you start to change anything, it becomes unbalanced. And the effects of the plant become the opposite. So if this plant's good for arthritis or inflammation or kidney stones, if you then synthesize it, it's now causing arthritis, causing inflammation, causing kidney stones. So God's saying, don't worry guys, I got this covered. It's cool, just go outside, enjoy, get out of the labs, you know. So everything is in balance, everything's already existed in balance. If we just see that and realize that and stop trying to control, we can live in complete harmony. So getting back to that nature. So balancing sodium, potassium, calcium, super, super important. There's an awesome book called Biological Transmutation, super, super enlightening, especially people working with minerals. It's an awesome, awesome read. And it basically goes into looking at, well, what produces our calcium? Taking in calcium, especially inorganic calcium supplements, are linked to heart attacks, strokes, arthritis, because it's an inorganic form. Your body can't use it. You can't grind up rocks and eat them. You can, it's going to be stored all over your body as calcification, which is in all the medications and all the food, processed food, all the milk. You know, they strip out the calcium in milk for pasteurization and they add synthetic calcium. Good for your bones, not really. Number 1 cause of osteoarthritis and kidney stones, gallstones, liver stones, all that stuff. So calcium, so we have biological transmutation, which is awesome. It's basically, it proved that certain minerals, when you take them in their body, transmute to other minerals. So if we're trying to increase our calcium, we're going to buffer our silica. Silica is another trace mineral. Silica is in like the skin of garlic. It's in the skin of cucumbers as well. It's in horsetail. It's in nettle. I don't know if you guys have, you should have nettle up here. Ortiga? Stinging nettle? Yeah, that's amazing. That's an electrical stimulator of the whole body. Silica is a spark plug of the body. So you see the touch nettle. So silica is a spark plug. It's rich in silica as well. Horsetail, colita caballo, is rich in silica as well. So people that are having arthritis or bone wearing, you know, all those kinds of things where they don't have enough osteopenia, osteomalacia, osteoporosis, all that's pH. You know, the parathyroid gland's pulling this excess calcium out of the bone to buffer the acid. So we're trying to increase not synthetic calcium, but the precursor to calcium. So silica is awesome. So Biological Transmutation is a really, really cool book. I talk to midwives, they're trying to increase iron in pregnant women. Well, you can't give them iron. The body's not going to absorb any synthetic iron. You give them manganese-rich foods.
What's the name?
Biological Transmutation. And it's a guy, Luis Kervran, Kervran. So when we start to look at that, we can have more of a complete understanding where we don't, 1 + 1 doesn't always equal 2. It can be anything. Husband and wife could equal 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. As many as you want. It's infinite. So looking at how the body does things, it's not as simple as it's been drawn out. Pretty much everything we've been told about nutrition, mostly nutrition and everything else, has been debunked. And it's been debunked years ago. Enzyme stuff has been done, 100 years ago. The latest recent research on enzymes is 70 years ago, 1945, 1950. They don't do it anymore. No one's paying for it. So we don't have any more clear understanding of these things. But when you dig back, you can look at stuff in the 1890s published research, in 1900, 1910, and they have most of the answers. The Merck manual had coffee enemas in there as a great way to reduce colorectal cancer. They've eliminated that. Anything preventative has been taken out. So one of the best ways, speaking of which, to cleanse the bowels onto coffee enemas. Unbelievable. Yeah, coffee enemas are the best way from a scientific standpoint to basically clear the liver. So coffee has theobromine in it, which cacao does as well. It's got theophylline and it's got caffeine. So all three of those cause a massive dilation and an increase of glutathione, which we talk about the garbage bag, and it dumps everything out of the colon. So while fasting, coffee enemas are super important, especially people on medication. If they're going to fast, they're going to really cause massive problems acutely because it's just too much. They're getting overwhelmed with too many chemicals that have never been found in nature. So coffee enemas are going to help clear the bowels. Dr. Wilson, if you want to Google Dr. Wilson, coffee enemas, he's got so much information on it, different ways to do it. He's got all the published studies on them. There's so many published studies on them. It's amazing. So yeah, that's one of the best ways to clear the bowels and detox the whole body. If you're into cancer treatment, alternative cancer treatment, Gerson, there's Gerson Center, which has been moved to Mexico from all the pressure in the US. They do coffee enemas and juicing mainly, and a lot of potassium. So back on to electrolytes, sodium, potassium, calcium. Now we got magnesium. Magnesium is super important. We've basically lost a lot of our magnesium. It's a top sort of mineral that I see deficient in people. And it's really important. So it's important for 80% of the functions of the body. It's the most alkaline mineral we have, so we lose it very, very quickly. So anything we have that's acidic, which anything you get in the store is typically acidic. Anything brown, if you look down, it's brown, it's acidic. If you look, it's green, that means there's chlorophyll in it. Chlorophyll is the most alkaline substance out there, so then it's alkaline. Okay. So trying to get more of this pH balance is super, super important. What was the mineral we were just on? Nice work. So it's 80% of the functions of the body. It's the one that's really chelated out. Next to calcium, it's going to go. Okay. So as soon as we have something acidic, we drink heavy that night. That's the calcium. Goes out. Magnesium second. Then we have potassium and sodium. So it uses those electrolytes to buffer that acid. Once those go, we start seeing other issues of the body. We see some lots of acidosis issues as well. So we also have sodium bicarb that's produced by the pancreas. That's another one that regulates pH. So the regulators of pH, we have the calcium, pretty much all the electrolytes, but mainly the calcium and the sodium bicarb are doing the alkalizing. The chloride is doing more of the acid kind of thing if our bodies get too alkaline, which is really, really difficult to get in this day and age. So we'll get a lot of chloride from the Soleil. The Cl is chloride. So if you look at hydrochloric acid, the HCl, the Cl is chloride. So a lot of people are really deficient in hydrochloric acid, which causes so many digestive issues, so many parasites. We should be killing everything that comes into our gut, but we have this weak sort of hydrochloric acid simply because we haven't used it. So hydrochloric acid is used to break down cell walls. So if we're taking in plants in their raw form and their cell wall isn't broken down, we'll need a lot of hydrochloric acid. If we're heating the food and breaking down the cell wall from heat, our bodies aren't going to produce enough. So pretty much everyone's deficient in hydrochloric acid. That's that digestive fire that starts a lot of it. So drinking more water, that Soleil is one of the best ways to increase hydrochloric acid. We also add a bit of apple cider vinegar in there, the Bragg's, which is organic, and a bit of lemon juice as well. That's sort of the morning routine. A bit of Soleil, apple cider vinegar, and some lemon juice. Squeeze that in a cup and drink that before you do anything else. That's going to alkalize everything. You guys want to take a break? Saturated?
5 minutes.
All right, we'll take a quick